Hi, and welcome back to my channel. My name is Rossy Rivera, and today I'm sharing how to make this stable or barn for our nativity scene. This is going to be part of our advent calendar gift, and you can find the template on our website, rossyrivera.com. It's a PDF document that you can download and print, and since this is a gift, it's completely free. I hope you like the project. Let's get started. To get started, we're going to have to cut out the pieces on cardboard, and you can use recycled cardboard, of course. So I'm going to get the front part of the stable, the bottom, and this piece is for the roof. And I have all the dimensions here as well as where you need to fold them. You might notice it's in Spanish on the video here, but the template on the website is on English. So we translated it for you, and we have all these small pieces and boards you're going to have to cut out. And we also converted the centimeters to inches as well, so both units of measurement are available on the template. Now for these, we are going to wrap them in brown clay. And I cut out 12. I have these ready already, but I'm also going to show you how to make them. Some are brown, some are beige, and I use these acrylics to get this color, and I use this burnt sienna for the brown color. I'm also going to link those in the description below. So now we're going to start making the first brown boards. Using 1/4 of a teaspoon in brown clay, I'm just going to stretch it out to the length of the piece. Now I'm going to make that wider until we can basically get twice the size of the cardboard piece. Once I have the size I need, I'm just going to add a little bit of glue at the top. Place my cardboard at the top. Add some glue to the top of the cardboard and then fold the rest of the cold porcelain over it. Now I'm just running again and smoothing it down with my roller, and then just cut off the excess. Just leaving a small area right there because we're gonna have to like place them together so we can smooth it down. It doesn't need to be too smooth since we're making wood for a stable and want it to look a little bit more rustic. Just like this. Now to get that sort of wood effect, we're going to start adding some stripes. You might notice we can see part of the stripes on the cardboard, those little waves, and we're going to make those stand out. Adding some lines from top to bottom. Some of them are a little bit curved, so we're just trying to mimic the grain you would find in real wood. So some lines are going to be straight, and then some of them are curved, just following along that made line we made before. And we have something that looks like this. That kind of looks like wood. Now we're going to do the same thing on the other side. Again, one little curved one. They don't have to be identical to the other side. We're just getting that natural look. And there we go. Now we have one board right here. I'm adding some of that texture to the sides as well. And we're going to do the same for all of the other boards. And to help it stand out a bit more, you might notice the dry one looks a little bit different. I'm going to use some toners. In this case, these are eyeshadows. This is the same thing as you would do with dry pastels, which are almost like chalk. And you can just scratch it off or grind it down, and you get this sort of eyeshadow powdery thing. The ones I'm using right now are actually eyeshadow, and they work just fine. So you can use that as well. And as you can notice, now that makes the grain or the texture of the wood stand out and be more noticeable. Now we're gonna need 12 of these, so I'm gonna do this again 12 more times. Now for the ones in beige, we're getting half a teaspoon in beige. We're only gonna need 2 of these, but these are going to be a little bit thicker, so we're going to need more clay, which is what we measure a little bit more. And I just measure that one as well, twice as high, but twice as tall, but the same width. And it's just going to end up being a little bit thicker. And we're just doing the same thing we did on the other board, adding some glue and wrapping the clay around it, just like this. The only difference is we're not going to give this one texture. We're cutting off the edges, cutting off the excess, and now we're going to have a piece like this. The only thing we're going to add or mark on it is making these sort of like curves to make it look like sort of, you can see the brick underneath the wall. Or more like stone actually, so they don't have to be like completely linear. We're going with very free lines. And I'm using the rubber brush to go over them to smoothen them a bit, to make it look even more rustic and get that sort of effect again, like they're stone. And now we're gonna do the same thing, adding some shading. And I'm getting this light sienna and sort of an orange tone or brick tone. And I'm just gonna add them in there where we other are sort of bricks or stone, just to make it look a little bit aged, and a little bit on the sides, both sides. And then everything else we're just gonna leave it in beige, so we're gonna try not to cover it too much. And I'm going back in with that brown or light sienna color, just like this, just to get that effect. And we're gonna do the same for both. Now we're going to continue with the base for our table, and for that we need 3 tablespoons of clay, again in that beige color. We're gonna stretch it as wide as our cardboard, and then we're gonna cover everything. I'm not going to wrap it around at the bottom, but you can do that as well. Since this is gonna go over a piece I already have, it's not necessary for me to cover it, but of course if you're gonna have this stand alone, you might want to cover it as well. Or if it's gonna be a movable piece, for example. Now I'm just running the roller over it to make sure it's glued properly, it sticks in place. And I'm gonna start gluing the sides. And just keep in mind that cold porcelain clay will shrink a little bit, so I'm just trying to always leave the excess and wrap around the sides. So if I need it to be 6 inches, I'm going to leave maybe 7, 8. Same for centimeters. If I need it to be 10 centimeters wide, I'm going to leave 12, 14, just to make sure I have enough space to let it shrink and still get the size I need. Now on the sides, I'm just going to get that little bit of texture using this tool, again making it look rustic, and doing that on the sides, going upwards. Of course, if you don't have a tool for it, you can use a toothpick just fine. You can see how I'm getting the same effect with both, and we're gonna do that all around. Once we're done, it's gonna look like this. And now we're gonna do the same again with the shading. So I'm just gonna go in with that orange color on the sides, going upwards, and then blending it out. And on the side itself, we're going to add more of a brown color. That light sienna we used before. And blending them properly, then doing the same thing all around. Once we're done, it's going to look like this. And now we're going to do the same and wrapping for the bottom of this house structure for the stable. Here we're going to need 2 tablespoons of clay, and we're also going to cover these 2 sides on both sides, so all around. And these are going to be the roof, but they're brown. So 1 tablespoon of clay for each, and 2 tablespoons for the back of the house. You'll see more in a moment. Now that we're done stretching out the piece for the back, remember that it's beige clay. I'm just going to get my cutout and add some glue. Adding enough glue to make sure it sticks well. And also all across the inside of the cutout. Around the window and around the door frame, making sure we have glue everywhere basically. Adding our gold porcelain clay on top of the piece. Adding some little bit of pressure just to make sure we can see clearly where we're going to cut. And you can also turn it around or flip it around, but it's better to cut out, look from the front side. So this is going to be the front. It's going to be visible, and it's better to cut around this side so it sort of bends towards the back. You can see how it looks like it's going downwards. If we did it the other way around, we're going to have extra work having to sort of shape it into the sides of the cardboard. So I'm just cutting out the window now, just like this. And it already looks like it's sort of wrapping towards the back of the piece. And again, just pressing down a little bit before we cut. And then just the other side at the top of the roof. And then the right side. If you have any edges that don't look too nice, or the clay is too thick, we're just gonna push it down towards the side, trying to cover the cardboard. And remember, it doesn't have to be completely smooth since we're going for that rustic look. We can also wrap it on the back. In my case, I'm not doing that again because it's not going to be visible, but if you're going to have a standalone piece, you might want to. Instead, I'm going with a little piece of this cardstock paper to cover the cardboard a bit. I'm just going to glue that in place like this. And now I can take advantage of the clay we have coming out from the front and wrap it towards the back, sort of wrapping into that cardstock paper we just added. Just like this, and that way we're gonna actually cover all the cardboard and help the clay stick together and merge with all the materials. Just doing that all around. Once we're done, it's gonna look like this. And now we're gonna make some indentations or marks to make it look like there's stone all around the door, just like this. And now we're going to start working from those lines into the house itself and making this sort of the same design we did for that board earlier that was actually part of the wall. And again, just making it seem like the brick or stone is exposed. So making those lines from the door itself to those curves we made, and then just getting that brick texture using my rubber brush to give it a little bit more lift, and then going over those brick lines again to make the lines look smooth and make them look a little less even. Again, focusing on that rustic look. Now we're going to do the same thing on the window. I'm gonna make like an outline around it. And we're gonna make it look just like it has sort of like stones or bricks all around. More like a square shape. Just like this. Going all around. Remember to get that arch shape, we have more like a trapezoid, so it's smaller at the bottom and bigger towards the sides. And we're going all around, so from the inside of the window to that outline we made. Now we're going to go over those lines with our rubber brush. Again, to make them look less just like drawn on. And it's, as always, if you don't have a rubber brush, we can just use a toothpick or a wooden stick, or also from the top part of a crochet needle, since it has that round shape we need. Just like this. And again, same here, we can do this using the wooden stick. Just like this. And now I'm adding sort of a bit of texture, lightly tapping with a rubber brush. We can go over any lines we want to highlight more. And now we're going to do the same thing on the left side, sort of like the brick is exposed. I'm just showing you here that with the wooden stick, it's going to look the same as we do with a rubber brush. It might look a little bit better with the crochet, the top part of a crochet needle, but it works just fine like this. And again, just spacing those out so some bricks look almost whole, and on the other ones you can see where the two bricks meet. And again, the same thing at the top, on the top right, making the curve where the wall is exposed. I'm just spacing out the lines. Just like this. Now we're going to start shading it. And we're going to use the same colors we use for the base. So I'm getting that orange or brick color. And then applying that where that brick or stone is. And then we're going to go over the edges with the brown color. So same on the inside of the door. I'm going to go over those lines with the wooden stick just to make sure they're thicker and they stand out. They're noticeable. And then the shading all around. And now with brown, going around that outline or edge. And remembering always to blend it out. Same here, we're going to do this on the top part. And blending always. Now we're going to do the same on the right side and the bottom with a little bit of orange, and then closer to the edge with that brown color. Removing the excess and then blending it out. Same at the top. And blending always. And now we have this facade already with the effect we need. Now we're going to wrap our clay around the roof. So I stretched this out to make sure it's as wide as the cardboard cutout and twice as high. Adding the piece here, and then glue to the top, and then wrapping around our clay. Making sure it's completely wrapped. And running the roller over it to make sure it sticks well and it's well stretched out. And now we're just going to cut off the excess from the sides, and it looks like this. Once we're done with that, we're just gonna double check where the fold is. And again, since this one is gonna be visible from both sides, that's why we wrapped it around on both sides. And I did the same for the other one, and now we're going to be able to put everything together. So we're only missing this one that we need to be as wide as the house. And I added it here, which is 12 centimeters long and 1 centimeter wide, but it's done the same way we did for the smaller ones. So to put everything together, I'm going to add some glue to the bottom of the house shape. And that's why it's important that the bottom has clay, because it's going to help it stick to the clay at the base. And now we can get any sort of recipient, jar. In this case, I'm going to use my paint just to keep it in place so it doesn't fall backwards. Now we're going to add these two pieces that are sort of like wall or a continuation of the facade. And I'm adding clay to the sides and the bottom. Right where it, and then place it together with the rest of the facade. Now I'm going to do the same for the other one, adding glue on one side and then at the bottom, and then placing it on the left side. Everything has to be to have glue in this case to make sure it sticks in place. And now it looks like this. Now we're going to add the roof. We're not gonna give it that wooden effect until we glue it into the rest of the piece. So as you see, I'm just adding glue to the top of the roof, the right side, sorry. And I'm just placing it from the middle to the right. And since I want it to stay in place, I don't want it to go down. As you can see, it's slightly moving down. That's why I made these other pieces. So I'm just going to use the other pieces I made in brown to support it. So these are the support beams. And it's going to be right in front of the small wall piece I had on the right side there. And then we're going to repeat the same on the left side. And since we need to join the both pieces of the roof together, I added some glue to the top of the roof piece we had already added. I'm just going to glue them together. As always, getting that flap on the left facing upwards while making sure everything's well stuck in place. And now adding the support beam right where that flap starts to make sure it's well supported and doesn't move. Trying to keep our roof from sinking. Ideally, these pieces would be fully dry so they can hold the roof without any issues. And once we have both sides, it's gonna look like this. And I just place it on this back so I can align everything, make sure it's straight where it should go. Now with this longer beam I have, I'm gonna place this one. And as you notice, there was a little gap, so that's gonna, having this one as a reference is gonna help me align them. In my case, I want it to be longer, so instead I'm going to measure the actual space between both beams instead of the house. So I'm going to make a new one that's 15 centimeters long. Now that I have the new one here, you can see it compared to the previous one. And I also updated the template. Again, this is available for free and in English on the website. So I'm adding plenty of glue to that top, to the front of both beams, right at the top, and then gluing our longer board across. And now from the center of that longer beam upwards, I'm placing another one of those short boards and then just cutting off the excess in that shape of the roof. So it's just some extra support for the roof, both visually and really, because we're gonna need some extra strength there. And for the sides, we're gonna do the same, but going from the center of the longer beam outwards at an angle. And again, just cutting off the excess there, taking into account the angle of the roof. And I prefer to do this once I'm done rather than having them cut ahead of time, because we can have different measurements, different placements as everything dries up. And this just helps me get a better result in the end. So now that I have the measurement for the one on the right, I'm going to do the same to get the one on the left. And now I'm going to glue them in place. Actually got that one wrong. So this one goes on the left. And I'm just going to glue that in place and do the same one for the one on the right. Once we're done, it's going to look like this. And now we're going to place two on the back there to sort of make it look like a door. Since this is stable or barn, we're just going with those two boards right here. And we're going to add one more that's sort of at an angle across the other two. We're going to glue them through the back, or on the back actually, The same way, I'm gonna leave the whole board, so I'm not gonna cut these out. Parallel, one on top of the other, and then this is the one I'm gonna get at an angle right over those two. The angle is fine, it's completely up to you. And just adding more glue as we go along to make sure it's well supported. I like it more and at that angle, so I'm just moving it around. And don't worry about the glue because thankfully it dries transparent, it's clear, so it won't be noticeable once everything is dry. Now I'm going to add 2 more boards to the sides. On the outermost sides on both left and right. Right at the end of the roof. And once we've glued them, it's going to look like this. And then we're going to add the last 2 boards. I'm going to cut them in half. And place them like they're sort of a fence from the side of the facade towards that support beam on the outside. The best way to do that in this case is to turn it around so it's easier to glue it in place. And this again is going to support the stable itself. And we're going to do the same thing on the other beam. Once we're done, it's going to look like this. And now we're just going to go back in and add that texture to the roof. Since the clay is drying up a bit, you might notice it looks sort of white-ish or in a different color, but it's gonna look just fine once it dries. And now I'm going to get more of the brown clay. I'm gonna measure that just to give you an idea of how much we need. In this case, I'm getting 1/4 of a teaspoon. I'm gonna cut it in half, then another half, so we have 4 pieces. I'm gonna stretch those pieces out to make it look sort of like tree bark. So now on these pieces, I'm gonna go back in with the wooden stick and add some lines. And then some lines, some horizontal lines across. And then I just tore it out from the main piece, and I'm gonna start putting them together on the roof. So sort of layering them in there. Just like this. We can shape it like we need. Just trying to keep these pieces a bit thicker since again there's tree bark. And once we're done, we just have to go back in with some of that dark brown eyeshadow or dry pastels. Again, just to make it look like tree bark. I'm just gonna go in there with my little brush. And we're pretty much done. That's it. Now we have a little stable ready for a nativity scene. I hope you liked the class. Thank you for watching as usual, for your lovely comments as well. And just trying to share some gifts with a lot of love. My name is Rossy. Many blessings.